We've got people that are watching us,
Rotate
and
your
they
phone.
love the fact that
Okay.
I don't wear the microphone anymore. So it's
Rotate
not
your
working.
phone, it says.
Do what?
Oh, can
Rotate
I pause
your
it?
phone?
Yeah, it says rotate your phone.
Does it need to be
Don't worry
rotated?
about it.
It looks normal?
No, it doesn't.
Because we can rotate the,
They're happy with no microphone because they can just look.
no, they actually hear y'all in this
I know.
microphone rather than one up here. I'm using this one to augment a little bit back there. So,
We can entertain them.
yeah, you do. You do. What do you think, Darlie? Does it look normal?
It looks normal, except the live is over on this side, looking this way.
Okay, we can turn that, you know.
All right, let's turn it.
Hang on, we're gonna try and orient this thing so you don't have to lay down to watch it.
You're gonna have to,
Which way does it go?
I think it needs to just go whichever it is, left or right.
Okay. Let's turn it this way again. Now, oops, don't want to do it that way. Okay, now you can go.
Okay.
Is that right?
Everybody at home is dizzy now.
Right. Is that not right? Does that look real? Like look right?
It actually, live is now down here upside down.
Flip it over the other way.
You have to help do that,
Okay.
because I don't know what it is you're doing. There! Okay,
Woo, that,
Is that right now?
I think so. Let me get you centered. Okay, that should be right.
Okay. If they flip halfway through, we'll have to do that. We'll get Val up here to correct it or something. She can whack
Okay, there
it.
we go. It's just
Is
a
it,
delay.
is it right now?
Yes, it's right now.
It's okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're going to gather the needs of our church family and that we're concerned about right now. Krista is doing well. She's back to work because she dealt with our little high maintenance dog, and she has a dear friend who lost her husband, and she got me to. I'll be doing the funeral service for them over at the Unitarian Church a week from Saturday. So that was really sweet and really affirming from Krista to say we've got a pastor that I would, if you don't have one, we've got to do that. So, but Krista's doing well, and I'm glad to report that. Ben seems to be doing well, according to Ben saying. Ben is out. This is like 2 weeks before school to get started, and so he's got all day Saturday, all day Sunday. He'll be at the university. So we won't see Ben tonight, or unless he walks in here a little bit late, but or this coming Sunday. So we have things that are doing it. Val says her mom's doing well. Still has a couple of more treatments of chemo, but manages it well. So now we keep praying for her and mentioning her. So that's just really neat to hear that way. Joy Kramer did have a stroke, but it's very similar to Joanne's son-in-law's. Minimal physical evidence of it. She's very alert. Short-term memory, but she's a little bit weak, but she was before she even had the stroke. But she's over at Doctors Regional. They have no rooms available. She's still in intensive care, not Doctors Regional, Bay Area. And but so she may be moving directly to rehab. And I was talking with Don today or yesterday, and he was asking about the rehab facilities that I have visited and would recommend. And so I told him the one that's over there on Embassy Road, where Patty was, where
Esplanade?
Mike Dixon was. Could be on
Esplanade?
Esplanade. Even there. I don't remember which road it was which, but yeah, it's over there in that thing. And that had been recommended to him. But Don is very weak, but they've got their daughter Tracy has a dear friend that lives here that will be picking him up and getting him delivered. Because I said we could try to work up something too, but she's got that covered. But we do pray for Don and Joy Kramer. Elizabeth Roman, we had great news that the chemo and everything else that she was undergoing seems to have given her a lease on life and some squelching of the cancer. I don't know about Michael. Did she mention, or she doesn't talk about where he is?
Michael seems to be doing better. better based on Facebook, and he has a better
Okay.
attitude. Yeah.
Okay, I don't do Facebook, so I don't keep up with that, so he's got a better attitude, because I know it's really downing for him, so we keep praying for them, we really, really do. The Pittman family, which is Ronnie and Debbie Howe's very dear friends, he passed away. It seems like his funeral service is like this coming Saturday. And that also, I think, is the service for that little 11-year-old grandniece of Ida's. Is also, I think, this Saturday. So, lots of grief going on that way.
Following Saturday.
The following Saturday on the 21st. Okay, that's when my funeral is for. But
Christmas.
that is just so sad. Linda Anderson got a very good report, as well as she could expect. She is going to be doing some radiation treatment on some new spots, but they seem to be identified not as new cancer, but kinds of polyps that need to be addressed that way. Then she has 2 cradles. She goes up and they stick her in one cradle and shoot one side of it, and then or they're going to decide which way they're going to go after it, because she said one of the spots that they have to go after is right next to a major aorta heart part, irrigation system, and if that's, I mean, that could do great damage to that, and that would be very deadly. So they're having to be extremely precise and get it done. But she was very delighted. She has been very ill with diverticulitis, maybe, or a reaction to some antibiotics. What she didn't know that Sunday when I talked with her, but was doing better. So
She said it was diverticulitis.
it was for sure. Okay. And but she just it was diagnosed before she went up to Houston, but then went into emergency care and stuff. But she seemed to be doing well. But we continue to pray for her. Judy's dear friends in real estate, as well as neighbors, Sandra Pratt and Rita Bracco, as well as Frances Quinn, their delightful Christian sister of ours from the Journey
Francis is my
community.
reunion group.
Yeah, Francis is a reunion group, so we are very much concerned for those. Vicki says that Rick has been hurting a lot, but he put up a door today. And it's amazing how mamas will really trigger a good response when they want a door up to keep mama away. So he found enough guts and energy to put it up, and that's always very positive to do that. And Vicki's got some doctor's visits coming up and evaluations, so Vicki will just keep praying for you and for y'all's dear friends at the Senior Center.
Now,
And,
Marion
Margaret.
White is,
Yeah, Marion White is in the hospital now, and he's struggled with cancer for lots. You don't know which hospital?
no.
Bay Area.
Is it Bay Area?
Okay.
Okay.
With
Because I
COVID.
did not have that with COVID. Yeah, and he doesn't need that because he's already physically challenged with this cancer that he does
Yeah,
daily
when
pills
she
and
called me,
everything
she
else.
said he was in Bay Area.
Okay.
And he has COVID now?
He has COVID now. That's part of the reason I think why he is there. So, Marion. His name just left me.
White.
I know, yeah. When I remembered White, then Marion came, so. Okay. We want to pray for Rochelle, who is facing surgeries of all kinds. And Rochelle Beckwith. Patty was here Sunday, of all ridiculous things. Just amazing. And just love that. And the blessed thing for me, I will tell you, and you know, maybe Patty's watching this, but I am treasuring how Suzanne is opening up and beginning to accept our love of her mom, as well as her. And one of the best, closest to Christ experiences I had this week was I go out to, somebody walks back to my office and says, somebody's wanting you, and they just did this. They didn't tell me who it was. So I get up and go outside, and there's Patty, and I'm getting her, and Suzanne says, I need a hug. And that is just really an incredible gift, that she would accept my embrace and just appreciate that we love. And she came in here and picked up a rose out of the funeral bouquet that was here, funeral arrangement, and that's really something for her to walk in and to do that. I just thank God that God is using us to do very special things for people that probably are afraid of God, are afraid of God's people, and that's just, y'all are just a precious community for that. Virginia was here Sunday, though she continues to face the possibility of surgery on the left eye to give it stability and keep the sight from leaving and going away. Joanne's son-in-law, she's probably back there now talking to Diane, but Roy had a stroke, but is going into rehab and seems to be doing very well, very much like Joy Kramer. And then Owen Davis has COVID and is weak. Very few other symptoms, no fever, nothing else, no lungs are clear, but he just has COVID and he was weak anyway, but this really is not
This
good
is
for
really
him.
not
He just, anybody, but this weakness, the way that it saps him. And there's quite a few COVID cases up there in Brookdale on each of the floors, but he does have one, and so we pray for Gary as he takes care of Owen, and just prays that God has a way of getting them through that and helping them see the other side. Marion White, we talked about, has COVID and is in the hospital. Other needs that you have that you would want us to know, Gwen?
My neighbor Becky Ducarm is in end of life care.
Okay, that's sad. Becky Ducarm.
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 D-U-K-A-R. She's been on the prayer list.
Yeah.
And
end of life is under hospice care, so, yeah. And that reminds me of our former brother-in-law, George, and his situation with a massive stroke, and so we just pray for that. Pray for that situation, yeah.
Did Krista say how Brandon was?
Braden.
Braden.
Yeah, Braden.
Braden.
Yeah, he had to go in, and I don't know, it was kind of a flu a little bit, but
Yeah,
my
it was bronchitis
conversations with
and
her,
stuff like that.
yeah, my conversation with Krista Dave really has been all week long. She and I have been texting back and forth, and really has been dealing with her dear friend Rosie's death, the death of her husband. We've been arranging this, and she didn't say anything about Braden. I asked her Sunday briefly, or texting, and she felt good about it, even though she had to take him into the emergency care thing. But he seems to be doing well. I don't know if
Yeah,
he's
she
back
was
in
she
school.
was telling me when she was at work that day that
Oh.
his fever was gone and he was beginning to clear up a little bit. So it was
Okay.
just serious
Yeah,
congestion
Kristen's
for
back
him.
at work because she took care of our dog.
Yeah, but she's still not feeling 100%.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah, she
a hard day for her
yeah,
from the
to
surgery.
be there, and with everything else going on. Yeah, thanks, Bill. Yeah.
My neighbor that lives behind me, her husband is in stage 4 kidney failure.
Okay. Oh
And
my.
he started dialysis, and now he's trying to tell her that he doesn't need to go anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So-
there's some incredible
she's
emotional,
really-
spiritual consequences that happen for people that are in that stage, and
She
some of them
just-
choose to die, and it's a dignified thing that God grants us, but it hurts the family
It's
so much,
hurting her.
and it's just you just don't want them. You don't want them to give up, and but my gosh, to stay away from that kind of joy and that kind of freedom, but yet at the same time, we don't want them to
Yeah.
leave us, but at the same time God gives them that capacity, but that's a sad thing. So for Pat Davis, thank
She's
you.
really
Thank you, Pat.
keep Wally on there.
Yeah.
He's not doing very well at all, and he went
He's got to
see,
a
he
certain
saw the
level
doctor
and-
in Houston just for a visit, but they still don't have anything scheduled.
Okay.
And I think the doctor may.
He's supposed to be facing surgery,
He is supposed to.
but no progress there.
I
Just
don't know whether Wally is capable of
okay.
going through that surgery, and I kind of think the doctor may doubt it too.
Yeah. Okay. For Wally, facing surgery, but may not need to be going through it because of all the other consequences. So, Joanna lied and said you're probably on the phone with Diane hearing about Roy, but okay, I guess right. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, oh
And,
yeah.
he's in
I wouldn't have
rehab.
jumped up there and answered the phone for anybody.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, I understand that. I know my place in your life, so that's okay. But just still good news, as good as can be expected.
Still good
so.
news, yes.
Okay.
They said he was
He
following
went walking today and
He was walking today.
with a walker.
Mhm.
He's
Yeah,
weak.
yeah, with a walker.
Yeah.
And of course he gets tired, but he's doing well.
He's going to be in a rehab situation that Diane can go and literally stay with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really, because she doesn't need to be driving, and when the boys leave, to be able to stay prolonged periods can be
Yeah.
really a gift for her.
But we're not going to cross that bridge yet.
No, but that's a real possibility. But he's going,
Yeah,
he's going into a rehab place that allows her to go.
right.
Yeah, okay. And that's really good.
That's good.
Okay, we're good. Anyone else? Let's pray for these. Oh God, we are so blessed to be touched and to be in love with people that you have loved far quicker and far sooner and far more intensely than we could have ever done that, but because we're part of a family, you have granted us hearts and awareness of each other and what we can experience together and how we can join your heart and heaven's resources to bring hope and healing and nurture and peace to people like this. God, thank you for that honor and that privilege that makes us deeper and richer as individuals, belonging to each other and caring for each other and praying for each other. Thank you for including us and allowing us that heart that is the gift of our Lord Christ and redemption and healing, that we get to do this together. God, we do thank you for the privilege of remembering these and talking about them and sharing our hopes and our anxieties about each of these circumstances. You're there. We thank you for being the kind of God that you are, that is always on the front lines, never losing contact, never losing consciousness of where they are. You keep ministering in very special ways, and we just thank you for including us as part of your instrument of healing in days like this. For it is in the name of the healing Lord, the great physician Jesus, that I pray for these. Amen. And I forgot to mention, it sounds almost trivial, but it's really not. It is of great consequence that Polly yesterday had to put down her 14-year-old Chihuahua. Heart issues, and just, it's always sad. There's a grief there. They become really very much a part of our family. So, and Ron is concerned about her rugrat or whatever it is. So, that heart's not going real well according to what she can hear. So
Their brothers are the same
they're
age.
brothers. Okay. So just we don't take that lightly. That's a grief that we go through, and God has healing for us.
He
that way, too.
definitely has an irregular heartbeat. You can pick it up with a stethoscope.
Mm.
Really
Yeah.
easy.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, for those of you that haven't been around for a long time, and I'm talking about Bill, we're in the book of Genesis, and we're still there. Get real close to being out of it, though,
They
Bill.
saved that for
Very
us.
close.
Just for you.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you knew where we were right now, but it's in chapter 42, and we're continuing to look at the story of Joseph meeting his brothers. Probably a dream or a possibility that Joseph never countenanced until all of a sudden he's in a place where God uses him to warn the Egyptian people, not Jews, not God-fearers, not people that believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, just common, ordinary Egyptians, pagans, worthless people. But it is to them that God raises up one of his own boys to prepare them for a worldwide kind of cycle of famine and plenty. And Joseph is equipped by the presence of God in his life to be one to lay out an organization plan to save up and store up in the major cities around Egypt all the land, surfeit, plant grains and stuff like that for the day when the drought would hit and they did not have enough, and they grew enough and stored enough that they have people who came from outside. There's actually drawings on some of the Pharaoh tombs that we have archaeologically discovered of a picture of foreigners coming and bowing down to the Pharaoh who's got a shock of wheat in his hand, coming to beg for food. And so this was a historical phenomena that the Jews experienced a story about one of their own playing a very integral part in God's preparation of Egypt, and thereby as an ancillary event to prepare and to take care of his own kids back with Jacob in Palestine. And so last week we began the story about how that Joseph gets everything in place and he's the governor of the land and has got all this laid out, when all of a sudden 10 boys show up from the north out of Canaan, And he immediately says to them that you guys look awful like guerrilla warfare. You guys look like military Proud Boys, or somebody that's been trained in some camps to come in and to spy out and see where we're vulnerable as a nation, because the one place that Egypt could not build fortresses and could build any kind of encampment was on the northeastern side of Egypt, which is where the Nile Delta was, which is where the grain was grown, because it's marshy. There's no place to build any kind of foundation. I mean, with our contemporary skills, we could probably figure some ways of putting up some armament that way, but back in Joseph's day, there was no place to protect it. It was the one part of the boundary of Egypt that remained incredibly vulnerable throughout its history for thousands of years to any marauding armies or anything else. They just, you know, when you saw somebody coming, you went out there and meet them face to face. There was no capacity to build up any protective barriers or fences or walls or outposts or anything else. And so he accuses his brothers, of course they don't know who he is, you know, that they are spies that have come to see the weakness, the nudity, the exposure of the land. And in verse 10, they say to him, "No, my lord, but to buy food have your servants come. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men, your servants, not spies." Joseph said to them, "No, it is the weakness of the land that you have come to see." He just got that bone in his teeth and he wouldn't turn it loose. And they said, "We're your servants, our 12 brothers. And they're pleading the case and even filling out more of the family story. "The sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And all of us are here, but the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. He's dead." Of course, Joseph's sitting here listening to that, and he knows he's not dead, that he's fully alive, but they don't know that they're talking to Joseph. And so we pick it up in verse 14. "But Joseph said to them, 'It is as I said to you, you are spies. I am going to put you guys to the test to prove that I'm right and you are lying to me. This is what I'm going to do.'" He's not punishing them. He is going to test them. He's going to assess whether or not they are truth tellers, because these are the brothers that lied out their ears to their dad and lied to each other back when they got rid of Joseph to the Midianites, or to the what was the other group that came along? Not the Amorites, but there were two groups that they
Hittites.
The what?
Hittites.
Hittite? No, I don't think so. Could have been. Anyway, so he says to them, "By this you shall be tested, by the life of Pharaoh," which is just a common, ordinary phrase like, "I swear on the Bible," or "I swear on my mother's grave," or this is as God helps me. It's just a flippant phrase. It has power for ancient civilization. It does not necessarily for us. But by the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. That's the test. You say you've got a younger brother. Put up or shut up. I want to see him. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, while the rest of you I'm going to incarcerate in prison and keep you under guard. You select which one of you is going to go back and bring your younger brother back to me, that your words may be tested, whether there is really truth in you, or else, by the life of Pharaoh, you're going to prove, if you can't produce that young kid, you're going to prove that I was right, you are spies." And so he put the family together, sequestered them away in a dungeon or prison for 3 days. Now, they're either going to come out fighting against each other, or they're going to come out with a unified plan. And so in verse 18, on the third day, Joseph had a change of heart, and he said to them, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, I'm going to keep one of your brothers here confined in your prison, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your household. And then bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and you will not die." instead of incarcerating all of them and letting one go back to bring the baby brother back to see Joseph to prove that they were telling the truth, by the third day he says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep one of you, and I'm going to send the rest of you back, and you're still going to be under the test to prove that you're telling me the truth and that you're not spies. And I'll wait for you to bring the brother back, because in the meantime, I'm going to hold on to your brother. And what he does, and at the end of verse 20 it says, and they did so. In other words, they agreed to it. They said, okay, that's what we'll do. We agree to the plan that you said. Then they said to one another, and they're talking in front of Joseph because they figure he can't understand them anyway. They're talking Hebrew or whatever it was their language. In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul. And now they're going back and they're remembering Joseph. All of a sudden, they're deceitful and they're sinister and they're ugly, desire to get rid of their brother, their 12th one. They're remembering that now. They are having to go back and relive that story. And we saw him, and we saw the distress of his soul when he besought us that we would not listen. Therefore God has made this distress come upon us. And the oldest one among them, Reuben, said to those guys, Joseph's sitting here listening to that dialogue. Reuben says to the rest of his brothers, did I not tell you not to sin against the lad? But you wouldn't listen to me. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. And then, verse 23, they did not know that Joseph could understand them. For there was, until that moment, an interpreter that Joseph played there between their language and his language, so that he did show up 75 minutes late. Right, come on, Ben. We're using Judy's phone upside down.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and it's been flipping around, so people are going to have seasickness by the time they watch this. Anyway, he is playing out this facade of pretending that he's not Joseph. He's just a Roman governor that's got charge over the land and is going to sell them some grain, and he pretends that he can't understand them, but he's been listening to their conversation, to them relive that story that happened some 20 years prior to this moment of encounter. And when he heard them, Joseph ran away. He didn't run away, but he hurried out of that room and he began to weep. He heard something he did not know. One of his brothers really did try to stick up for him. But probably Joseph had lived with 20 years with the resentment that none of his brothers cared one bit what happened to him. And now the oldest brother, he hears, has tried every way in the world to keep them from harming the lad. And it just moves him. He realizes that family stories are not real cut and dried. They're not real simple. They're complex. They involve a lot of movement, a lot of issues, a lot of memories, a lot of ways that each and every child in that family experiences maybe the same thing. It's very interesting to sociologists to go back, for example, into ghetto homes and realize that in a single home, one of the children can become a gang member and drug addicted, and the other child in that home can become a physician and an upstanding citizen in the community. And they're trying to explore what's the difference. Why does one become so good and self-protecting and self-asserting, and the other one succumbs to the quick buck and to the sinister lives of abuse and of self-destructive behavior? And here Joseph is listening to the story. And it's a dynamic story, and it's a story filled with lots of mystery and a lot of alternative streams of motivation and of thoughts and of values and of conversation. He goes and he weeps. When he finally gets control of himself, Joseph returns to them to speak to them. And Joseph decided he's not going to keep the oldest brother Reuben. He's going to keep the next to the oldest brother Simeon. And if you'll remember back several chapters ago, Simeon along with Levi were two brothers that really slaughtered a bunch of the people up in the northern section of Canaan, and were forbidden to have land or anything else. But you know, we don't know if that's part of the way Joseph made the determination. But Simeon was the next in line. Reuben was the oldest, Simeon was the next to the oldest, and so he takes Simeon, thinking that the older brother needs to be the one that navigates and gets him back home, and is going to be the one who can most assuredly discuss or argue or move his dad to respond to the needs of this despot king back in Egypt, that if we're going to get more grain, if we're going to get Simeon back, we got to take him Benjamin. And so he keeps Simeon the next in line. And what he does with him is interesting from antiquity. He took Simeon from them and he bound Simeon before their eyes. And he does that not as a threatening gesture, because Simeon's not going to stay bound, and they know that. He's got to be set free to eat and to take care of nature's needs and maybe to work and everything else. But by binding him in front of their eyes, it was belief, and it's still very much a part of contemporary culture. One of my dear friends that has, he never got a PhD because he refused to do the dissertation, but he did everything to get a PhD in history. It's remarkable. He was raised in a family that, for example, believed that before you leave the house, you need to sit in a chair. And so he'll start walking out of the house and he'll stop, turn around, go and sit in a chair, and then he'll get up and leave. That's just the way his family behaves, so he just believes that that's what you have to do. There's a couple of other peculiarities that he pays attention to. This very brilliant and very educated person, but part of that family system is that this is what you do. You've got to do this before you can move on with that. And so it has, Simeon being tied has that kind of thing of simply saying, if you want to know what's going to happen to you, look what I'm doing to Simeon. It's sort of a magic warning. It's sort of like, this is what's going to happen if you don't carry through with you and you lie to me. You watch Simeon being bound, I'm going to bind you, and you're not going to be able to move or have any freedom to continue your life without that. And so having bound Simeon before them and before their eyes, Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain. And Joseph told those grain stackers to replace every single dime that those men had brought with them to buy the grain back into those sacks. And then even more, after he filled those sacks, he said, now I want you to stack up some more buckets and some more bags and some backpacks with provisions, so that on their 3 or 4 day journey back to Canaan, they don't have to dip into their sacks. You'll have enough provisions for your animals as well as for you to get back home, and then you can start living off of what you came here to purchase. So I mean, they're being treated like guests. You come to our house for a meal, and Judy will find a bunch of little plastic containers, and she'll take the food that she has over prepared, which she always does, and she's going to divvy it up, and she's going to stick it there and stick it in a plastic bag and hand it to you and say, go home with this, eat it. We're not going to, because you're a guest. It's the way you treat
I may
guests.
not always do that.
Yeah, there's a few items that she can't do that with, because I won't let it out of the house. But the other things, she's glad to get rid of. But anyway, that's the way you treat a guest. And there's something consequential that those guys are not going to pick up on, that Joseph has really treated them as honored guests. He doesn't charge them a dime for the grain that they need, and he gives them enough provisions, enough American Express travelers cards, and maybe some gift certificates to Whataburger, so that on their trip back, they don't have to cook or they don't have to buy. They're gonna have provisions to get them back home to Canaan. And so this was done for him. Then they loaded their asses with their grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Look here, it's in the mouth of my sack." And when the fellow brothers see this, their hearts were just shaken. Their hearts failed them. And they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us? He's been accusing us of being spies. Wait till we get back there. Now we're going to be held as thieves." You know what happens to thieves in antiquity? You got your hands cut off. As I shared with you last week, this chapter is the Yankee version of the story. When we get to the next chapter, which will be 2 weeks from now, we'll enter the Southern tradition of the story, and there's going to be a very distinct part of the story that's going to change. And one of them is that in the J tradition, in the Southern tradition, the more primitive tradition, they don't open the sacks until they get home in front of their dad, and they all open their sacks, and they find every one of the sacks the money that they thought that they had given to that governor that they don't even know is their brother, that they give, that they find their money back in their sacks. In this Yankee tradition, one of the boys opens his sacks, and there's the money there, and he points it out to his brothers, and they began to fear what God has got him set up for. Is he going to accuse us now of being thieves? What's going to be the outcome of this? This money shouldn't be in here. We bought this grain. How are we going to prove that we didn't steal it from the granary while their backs were turned, or maybe it was nighttime? This old governor is not to be trusted. Simeon's back there still in chains. He's waiting for us to bring the other brother home. Do you think we can go back and trust a guy like that with our baby brother? That's going to kill our dad. And when we get to that part of the story, we're going to find out that Jacob literally has to be starving to death before he'll finally let Benjamin go back. Because he knows that if he takes Benjamin back, he knows that Benjamin's going to be killed. And when he does, that's just one last brick of his sanity that's going to be pulverized, and he can't survive that. Yes, Gwen.
Were the prisons there prisons like all the prisoners, or were they more like the house arrest like Paul?
No, they were more like dungeons. There's a word that was used to describe where Joseph himself was incarcerated, and it seemed to have been a more like a dungeon, subterranean place that couldn't, that was easily, kept that way. I don't know that, I haven't even examined and researched to see what kind of incarcerating facilities they might have had in Egypt at that time, but the word used to describe where Joseph was incarcerated was probably the same place, and it would be more like not a house above the ground. It would have been in a cave or in a dungeon, a place that was not easily escaped. Because nighttime and lighting and everything else, they had to put guards at an easy place to keep them there.
Is there any more reference to Reuben? Simeon and Levi.
Yeah.
They were.
Reuben is a consequential figure, but yeah, he doesn't carry on anything.
So he's
He's there. Yeah, he's. I'm not as enough of an Old Testament scholar to be able to run ahead and remember the total story. But Reuben's a very tender and protective older brother, and this is manifested here in some other stories. I can't remember if he plays a consequential part. I think when they're trying to talk Jacob into letting Benjamin go back with them, I think Reuben's going to play a big role in that, and promises him that Benjamin is not going to die before he dies. I will put my life in front of him. It reminds me of the first time I ever went into Cairo. So I'm sitting there in prison on Thursday evening waiting for it. This is Friday morning. We're waiting for the prisoners to get out of their homes to come into the gymnasium for us to begin the Kairos journey. And the steward that was over my table was big hungry, massive guy. And he came over to me, and this is my first time there. Of course, everybody knew it. I mean, they just love teasing clergy that show up for the first time and telling us scare stories and everything else. And Big Hungry came over and he says, "Now, Billy, I want you to know something happens in here. You don't worry. I'm going to throw you on the ground. I'm going to lay on top of you." And I said, "Big Hungry, you lay on top of me, that's going to kill me. I'd recommend you find another way of protecting me." He laughed about that, but and it was really a very strong demonstration of love and appreciation for us being there. The truth of the matter is, when we're in that inner sanctum of that prison, in that gymnasium, we're in a very safe place. There are something like 25 stewards that are doing the cooking and serving the tables, and I mean, they live it because we feed them outside food. They've already been to their Kairos experience, and now they're our servants, and so they love being there. But I mean, they will not let anything happen. They will go to battle to protect the free world people, and it's just really amazing. And there's never a threat that way. In fact, I've told you before that one of the most surprising moments for me was it was a Saturday, maybe in Friday lunch. It was a lunch. I remember we were sitting in the other gym that abuts the gym that we meet in, and that's where we go to have our meals and stuff. And I'm sitting across from one of the guys at my table, and he kind of stops, and he kind of looks around and comes back and he says, "I don't believe this." I said, "What don't you believe?" He said, "I've been here 15 years. And you've never seen you get this many prisoners, the men in white together, if there's not something going on." And I looked over his shoulder, back across, we were sitting one end of the gym. I looked at all the tables and everything else. And way down at the far end, there were some guards. I think 3 of them. And we got a gymnasium full of 42 plus 28, probably 70 prisoners. And those guards got their backs to us, and they're chowing down and eating. They're safe. Jesus Christ, in his incredible gift of peace and love, in that place, there is a rule in the prison system that you don't embrace in any fashion, and it's not to prohibit any kind of inappropriate sexual behaviors, because there are needs for great sexual expression there out in the general population, but so it's a rule. You go into Kairos, and the moment you enter Kairos inside the gymnasium, it's no longer handshakes. I get bear hugged. They bear hug each other. These men are so starved for authentic affection and affirmation. And you walk in, they don't want to shake your hand. They will walk up and, "Wow, I'm so glad to see you." And if they know you especially, oh my goodness, you get hugged. And it's a violation of the rules of the prison. And the prison warden knows it. But in that environment, in that circumstance, the love of Jesus Christ is given full vintage and full expression. And it's amazing to watch it happen. And it begins the transforming power, because us free world people in there, we'll tell our stories if they ask us. We're not in there to preach or to proselytize or try to get people converted. We go in there, the mantra of Kairos is listen, listen, love, love. That's it. Listen, listen, love, love. Don't talk. Keep your mouth shut. You're given 2 ears and 1 mouth. And we go in there to listen to those guys and to love them where we find them. And we don't know what they've done. If they're in there, they have done something that would have scared us out in the free world. But in there, Christ is in the business of transforming them. So it's really an amazing thing what God's going to do with Joseph and his brothers when they finally get together. And the healing that's going to come, and the transformation of a small band of family to become a mighty nation, to go back into the promised land soon after Joseph is dead and the Pharaoh doesn't remember. That's the end of Genesis. That God takes them out in the Exodus and takes them home, and they began that adventure of bringing us the Messiah, whose name is Jesus, who redeems us. Okay, that's enough. I will send you. It's almost time. Yes, darling.
Do you know Mike Harrington?
Uh-huh.
Jose Martinez sends prayers for Mike Harrington as he left this world.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Mike is a Kairos guy. And just a neat guy. Really liked Mike so much. And so Jose Martinez is the one that sent that to
Yes.
you? Okay. Wow. Okay, the Harrington family. Yeah. Mike was just really a very, very neat friend and neat part of the Kairos experience, committed to it. And had gone through some difficult things himself, but God brought him out on the other side. So that's sudden, because he's not even my age. I don't know how he was, so I'll keep my eyes open for that. Thank you, darling. Okay, we'll add that to our prayer list. Okay? Good. Ben will, as I told you already, I'm really dumping on him right now, but he won't be here Sunday. He's working all day out at the university.
All day Saturday and all day Sunday.
Saturday he'll be here all day, right? I do have a brief 3 o'clock funeral preparation counseling thing in my office at 3 Saturday afternoon.
That's where we're hanging out.
No, you're not hanging out in my office. It can't hold more than 2 or 3 of you, and it's fine, Ben. Okay.
Yeah, we won't.
We'll walk.
We'll
Yeah,
be
I
in
know. Y'all be back there, and then I'll walk in, close the door, and we'll get it settled and stuff that way.
My boss Jennifer and I will come here tomorrow evening, and I'll show her the space.
Okay.
And I'll show her what we have in here and what we have in there.
So y'all can lay out how you want to use it. Yeah, there's no team meeting in here Saturday. I just have that one conference moment that won't last 20 minutes, but
That won't.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just letting you know that, but there's no problem for me to be here, and I'm kind of assuming I won't be disrupting anything. We walk through and I go to my office and do it. Okay, good.
No.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, let's have prayer. Let me dismiss you into the care of a God who knows right where you are and where you're going. God, I give to you my brothers and sisters, your children. Go with us from this moment into a world that is filled with danger. But God, go with us in a way that we walk boldly into that world, knowing that we are your soldiers. We belong to you, and that there is a might, a transforming might of life and hope and promise and redemption that we take with us. Give us that dignity and that courage to simply face what we will encounter, with the hearts transformed by the living Christ, to be bigger and larger and more capable than we could have ever designed on our own. Oh God, bless my brothers and sisters, these your children, as we continue to be your representatives into a world that doesn't get represented at all. I ask your blessings and protections upon them in this moment and for their days as we wait to gather here again. In the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. Blessings on you. You're dismissed, Ed.